testing. Episode 1, season 2. Season 2 has arrived. Welcome, everybody, to season 2 of Mujeres Create. This is such an exciting day for me to be back recording. I took a short break. It felt like it went by so fast. I was supposed to record my last episode of season 1 in December, but between moving from Connecticut to Rhode Island, and we'll talk about that, and the holidays, I was not able to get my act together. So that episode ended up running in January, but that's okay. Definitely embrace imperfection last year. It was a year of a lot of changes for me. A lot of what I discussed in season 1, from leaving the corporate environment to doing a full review on my corporate experiences, to talking about my healing journey and therapy, to interviewing so many wonderful women and men on the show. It was definitely, I feel like it went by so fast. I wanted to take a little break just to give you all a break from the content and to give myself a break, because I wanted to recalibrate and just see where I wanted to take the show in the second season. But we're here, and I'm so excited to be back in my little home studio. It looks different. As I mentioned, I moved from Connecticut, my home in Connecticut, to my mother's house in Rhode Island. I'm going through a period of transition, and I don't know where I want to live yet. And so I thought, why not go to my mother's house? And it's been really wonderful. So this is my new little home studio. But welcome to season 2, episode 1. I definitely feel renewed energy. I feel a lot of excitement, a lot of motivation. I feel lightness. I feel like season 1, I was putting a lot of pressure on myself because I thought the process of podcasting looked one way, but this season, I just really want to enjoy the journey, and wherever it goes, it goes. I'm just excited to share my voice, hopefully create content that is inspiring and just bring people along for the ride. And so I'm giving myself a lot of grace this season. The month of January was critical for me because I feel like it was the first month over the last few years that I've been home. All month I was here at home. I was resting, doing a lot of meditating, a lot of journaling, my vision board, eating healthy, working out. I've spoken about this Ayurveda certification, and the month of January was critical for that certification, which I'll talk about more in details. But the month of January was beautiful. It was amazing to just be home and not travel, not go anywhere. I was literally home every day. It was awesome. Then in February, I started to travel again. I went to Guatemala with Tech to Empower. Right after that, I went to the Dominican Republic with a lot of my friends from the media industry, women in media. I created a mini series around that, which I'll share with you guys. And then after that, I went to Puerto Rico for my sister's bachelorette, which happened right before my birthday. So I decided to stay for my birthday. So literally February and part of March have been on the road. Now in March, we're here. I just turned 45 last week on March 10th. Fun fact, Bad Bunny and I share a birthday. He is a Pisces king and I'm a Pisces queen. So it's nice to share a birthday with Bad Bunny. But I was in Puerto Rico and I got to spend a beautiful beach day. I found this beautiful boutique hotel on the water in San Juan, and it was blissful. I had breakfast. First of all, I woke up, I did a meditation, a gratitude prayer, I journaled, then I went down for a little beach walk. I had some Prosecco, then I had lunch, and it was so nice. It was so beautiful. This is the second time that I spend a solo birthday, and I have to say, obviously, it is wonderful to be with people and to, be surrounded by family and friends. And I definitely celebrated in that way with my family afterwards. But doing solo things on your birthday is powerful. And there were moments where I was kind of like, oh my God, this is so lonely. I wish I could share this with someone. Because the weather was beautiful, the sun, the setting, the food, the drinks. And I'm like, would it be nice to share this with someone, a family member, friends? But regardless, it was really magical to be there on my birthday. I'm definitely one of those people that feels a lot of gratitude around birthdays. Birthdays to me are very special because it's kind of like starting a new year. This is like officially the beginning of the new year for me, right? My birthday. And so I always love birthday energy. But this year, turning 45, it's like, mid 40s officially. There's been a lot of my mind. First, it feels like the jump from 30 to 45 goes really fast. I remember celebrating my 30th birthday in Chicago with my sister and my cousins, and even going to Disneyland and celebrated there with some friends. And it feels like I was just 30 years old. I blinked and now I'm 45 years old. So that time span went so fast that I'm just fascinated by how quickly we get to 45. And at times when I'm like thinking too much, I'm like, shit, if that went fast, imagine from 45 to 60, how quickly that will go. These are things that I just have in mind, right? So it kind of got me thinking about doing this episode on midlife. And because I have been going through a midlife crisis, I thought, why not do an episode on midlife crisis? I definitely experienced it. I know that not everybody goes through a midlife crisis, thank God. There's some people that are able to live their lives very peacefully, no disruptions, no crazy events, no crazy like crises. That wasn't me. I definitely have been through a crisis over the last few years. So I wanted to talk about midlife crisis. And I'm naming this episode From Midlife Crisis to Midlife Rising, rising to the occasion of getting older. It is an occasion. And so I wanted to explore that because I know that, especially for women, I talked about being in Guatemala, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. In these 3 trips, I was surrounded by a lot of women of all ages, from 20s to 30s to 40s to early 50s. And a lot of us are having similar conversations around aging, around hormonal changes, around life changes, life events, things that are just happening. And while we're experiencing a lot of personal changes in our lives, the world is also in a very interesting time in our lives. There's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of loss, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of, obviously, wars happening. And it feels like there's so much happening in life. Where's the peace? Where's the love? Where's the balance? It feels like you wake up and there's something happening. So at the same time, we're navigating all these life changes. The world is also moving at such a fast pace. And I talked about a lot of the negative things that are happening, but technology is quickly advancing. The workplace is evolving and being disrupted as well. Children are growing up with, a lot of information, a lot of changes, unfortunately, a lot of anxiety. So our world is really moving so rapidly that, of course, it affects how we think, how we act, our habits, our stress levels, all of it. So I wanted to create an episode about that, the crisis of midlife and how we can navigate it. There's been a process to my midlife crisis. There's been like steps and processes, but I wanted to understand, how does it look for most people? What does a midlife crisis look for most people? Those people that experience a midlife crisis, what does that look like? So I went to my friend Google and to Gemini specifically, and I typed in the stages of midlife crisis, right? And before we get to those stages, there's 5 stages. But before we get there, I remember as I was in my 20s hearing about midlife crisis. It was mostly like men experiencing midlife crisis, like leaving their marriage, getting a young, going to get a younger girlfriend, buying the sports car, like blowing up their lives. I always heard about that. I don't know, media, right? I rarely heard about midlife crisis for women. And we talk about women experiencing changes, going into perimenopause, going into menopause. And obviously, a lot of that is changing, and I'm experiencing that. But it's kind of what I wanted to explore more is like the broader changes in midlife that are happening to women and to all of us. What I wanted to do for this episode is compare notes. I definitely have been through a midlife crisis, as I mentioned, between, leaving my corporate career, to experiencing a hysterectomy that was unexpected, to ending my 5-year marriage last year, to moving out of my house into my mother's basement, to getting braces. My life has definitely blown up, for lack of a better word, but obviously in all the good ways. I wanted to compare notes between what I experienced, the order of events that I experienced, to what Google has to say, because I understand that the crisis looks different for everybody that may be experiencing it. I kind of typed in, life crisis. What are the stages of life crisis? And 5 stages came up, and I know there may be a lot more. In the interest of time, I'm going to explore the 5. These 5 definitely mirror a lot of what I experience, and so I think we can start there. And if you're experiencing different things, definitely let me know how I can support, or just share a comment, an observation, an experience. So the first stage, the trigger. The trigger point. What is the trigger point? It can be a life event that triggers this crisis where you're kind of questioning what's happening, feeling differently, kind of starting to have some fog in your mind about your life and where you're going and where you're headed and what's happening. So it could be turning 40. For me, it was turning 41. It could be perhaps for families who have children, it could be when the children leave the home and you're an empty nester. That could be a trigger point, right? It could be your oldest child graduating college. It could be turning 50. It could be any major life event that kind of triggers that sensation of what is actually happening. How did I get here? Why do I feel this way? Why does everything feel different? And so that's the first step, right? Is identifying that trigger. For me, when I turned 41 is when I remember the first time my life seemed like what is actually happening. And these were pandemic years. I turned 41 in 2022. And I don't think it had anything to do with getting older and fearing turning 40. It was more about, I don't know, it was just like a mental fog. I couldn't understand what was happening. And a lot of it also for me had to do with the fact that I had fibroids at that point growing significantly in my uterus, which I later had to take out through a hysterectomy. But my body was very inflamed. And so maybe that had a lot to do with that fogginess, that those changes for me. But that's what I remember. Like at 41, I remember that my life started to change and the chaos started to come in and I started to feel different. I started to question what is actually happening. And at that moment, I was also thinking about becoming a mother and having children with my husband and navigating all of that. And I think the sense of pressure that I felt in that moment also kind of triggered it. And then the 40 started to seep in, and then the 40 started to kind of like, I'm like, oh my God, I would look at myself in the mirror and I would notice myself getting older. I would notice just like physical changes, right? Weight gain, physical appearance. And a lot of the times we kind of like think about physical appearance as the main thing, but realistically, internally is what we need to be thinking about, right? What is happening to our bodies, to our minds, to our hormones? Are we eating healthy? Are we working out? Are we staying on a good path when it comes to our health? But that trigger point serves as a way to identify, okay, when did this actually happen? And as I kind of trace back my steps, I identify my trigger point to be at 41. Has there been a trigger point for you? And is that helpful to understand that maybe for you it was turning a certain age? Maybe it was your children, meeting a milestone. Maybe it was something that happened in the workplace. Maybe it was, obtaining something that you really wanted and then you felt like, I don't know, like, is this really important? What was that trigger point for you? It's very helpful to go back and see, because oftentimes when those trigger points happen, a lot changes from that point, and we don't know it until we're on the other end. But when we try to identify what that is, it just makes life so much easier, and it definitely has done it has for me. So for you, like, what has there been a trigger point that you can identify, and what was that like? How did it feel, and how are you feeling about it now? The second stage is the anger and resentment stage. This is a stage that definitely happened to me. Some of the anger, or maybe feelings, emotions that you've been holding, that you've been kind of keeping inside, that you haven't expressed for various reasons. For me, I am the first daughter, immigrant generation. My family is very silent. We don't talk about our issues, our pain. And so growing up, I grew up with a holding in a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings. I rarely communicated things that concerned me, things that worried me, things that angered me. And so all of that was like dormant inside of me. So in this stage of my crisis is when all that anger came out. And I'm not proud of it. And I've spoken about this in some of the episodes. Definitely not proud of this anger stage. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult stage. And this stage is kind of about questioning what you've been doing, who you've been spending your time with. So from a family perspective, some people may feel as they're going through this stage that their families, maybe their parents, their siblings, their family setting might be holding them back from doing and accomplishing the things that they want. If they are in a relationship, in a marriage, or just with a partner, they may feel like that partner is holding them back in some way. Perhaps that they've been sacrificing too much for too long for the wrong person. In the workplace, you may feel that you've given so much to your career, so much to that company, and you have not been appreciated. You kind of start questioning everything about your life, that feels out of alignment, that feels out of balance. And remember, you're going through a midlife crisis. So a lot of these feelings, a lot of these emotions, maybe temporary. Maybe this is just a moment of kind of having everything sort of blow up in your face so that you can reassess, what stays and what goes. So these are just some symptoms that you may be feeling, again, in the workplace, with your family, maybe with your children if you have children. What I've heard from mothers sometimes is that they do spend a lot of their life attending to their children, catering to the needs of their children, sacrificing some things in their lives for their children. And then when they get to this age where they have a midlife situation, they start to question, was it all worth it? What about me? What do I do now if I have been staying home, caring for my family, and now they're out of the home? What does that mean for me? Who am I now in this identity, in this new life stage? And one stage that I feel like a lot of people don't ever come back from, because you're angry, you're resentful, you go off on people, you go off on situations. And some people take that as like, oh, that's who she is, I'm never talking to that person again. Other people are like, okay, she's going through something, I'll give her some grace. Identify the trigger. Now it's like, okay, what's happening with my life? What am I doing? Why am I working here? Why am I living here with this person? Why is my family acting this way? Why are my friends acting that way? All of the questions and worries and situations just like rise out of nowhere. And it sometimes it comes up as anger and resentment. And so for me, It was about the workplace. And, I was ready for a shift in my career. And I was in a diversity and inclusion role at the time. And a lot of the things I was experiencing in that role were not making sense, were making me very angry. And one day I just exploded on my boss. And I don't feel proud about it because she's a very nice lady. I just exploded. And then I ended up leaving my corporate career. And obviously, everything worked out because I was ready for a change anyway. In my family dynamic, I started to question, the behaviors, the mindset. Why couldn't we just talk about our problems, our things, our situations? Why couldn't we be healthier or act a certain way? Like, I started to question everything with my family dynamic. And in my home with my partner, my husband at the time, we're trying to figure out, are we having a baby? Are we not having a baby? I was experiencing a lot of fibroids. A lot of that information was aggravating me in so many ways. And I'll talk about my hysterectomy in another episode, but definitely feeling a lot of frustration having to make this decision because I was getting older and I didn't feel like I was ready for it yet. The pressure was there and I didn't know what was going on in my body hormonally, physically. And so all that anger definitely came out. So this stage is all about getting things out of your system, getting things out in the open. Again, some people come back from it. Some people can't repair relationships afterwards because, so much of what's coming out is really the ugliest part of you that we all have. We all have that ugly side. I definitely have, and I definitely have gotten that out, especially through a lot of therapy and a lot of self-help and just navigating how all these things in my life have changed over the years. So this stage I think is very pivotal because you have to get these things out. I feel like if you are flourishing into a new person, these things have to come out, right? And so in many ways it's a good thing to go through the anger stage. It's not fun to be going through the anger stage. I definitely have moments where I went off on coworkers, I went off on family members, I went off on friends, I went off on my partner. I just went off and I'm not proud of it. And I'm just glad this is over because definitely I am in a much, much more peaceful place. It looks very different for whatever stage you are in life. I think just recognizing that these questions tend to pop up during this anger stage because I feel like you're trying to get things out, but at the same time you're maybe looking for someone to blame because it couldn't be about you, right? This is about other people. So sometimes we're looking for people to blame, not knowing that this is all just things that need to come out of us, that need to kind of leave our bodies, leave our souls. And there's no one to blame, but it's just part of your self-discovery. The third stage I think is interchangeable. Anger, denial. It could be trigger, denial, anger, or trigger, anger, denial. It depends how you're experiencing it. But the third stage is denial. Some people may feel like I'm not getting older. I still got it. And then they start to try to prove themselves and try to prove that they're not getting older, that they still got it. And they start doing crazy things. This is what I'm referring to about the example on men getting older and like the stereotype that we see on television, which is they left their wives, they got a younger wife, and then they got the car, and then they bought the mansion, and then all of this, right? So that stage of denial can happen when we don't take time to like assessing, okay, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm not 30 anymore. In my case, I'm 45. Assessing what does that look like and understanding that your body, your mind, your soul, everything is evolving and versus like trying to prove that you're not older, understanding, okay, I am getting older. What does that look like for me now? Because I'm not in my 20s anymore, and that's okay. I enjoyed my 20s. I'm not 30 anymore. I'm not in my 30s anymore. I'm not trying to prove myself in my career. I'm not trying to go after things that I don't need or prove anything to society, to my family, to anyone. Rather than masking or denying, is kind of like processing and understanding where you are actually in your journey through your phone, and you look at pictures of yourself from when you were in your 20s, from when you were in your 30s. Maybe you look younger, maybe you look thinner, maybe you look cooler, maybe you look happier. Remember, this is kind of like a view in the past. And so you're not going to remember exactly how, if you were happier with yourself at that point. You think you're happier because you're unhappy right now. You look back and you're like, I was happier then. This is very unhealthy thing to do. And definitely I've done it. When that 2016 trend came up, I was definitely looking at 2016 and it looked like I had the time of my life. I was definitely cooler, thinner, thriving, happier. But was I? I don't know. Like it's kind of a blurry vision. But in this denial phase is when you don't want to accept that maybe you are getting older, maybe your needs are different and you need to pay attention. Maybe your career's not where it needs to be, or maybe you don't need to be in that career anymore. It's kind of like trying to prove to the world that you still got it. That is, that you're not getting older, that you don't have wrinkles, that you don't have gray hairs, that your collagen is not leaving. This is like a denial phase, right? So it's like denying where you are, which is unhealthy for sure. It's like, why do we want to deny the present that we're in? I think a healthier thing is giving yourself grace and kind of taking stock of where you are now in life, in your life. And that everybody is going to go through the aging process. If it's not about aging for you, if it's more about your family dynamic, raising children, maybe you're empty nester now, and you don't want to accept the fact that now you don't have to focus on your children anymore. Now you have to focus on you. And if you've been dismissing yourself or dismissing your needs for 20 years, now you have to pay attention to yourself. And that's hard, right? It's hard to look at yourself and say, wow, for 20 years, I have not thought about my needs. I have not thought about what I actually want. I have not thought about my dreams and my goals. And now you have to look at that and make peace with that and decide if you're going to be too afraid to go after it, or if you're going to break through and understand that you still have a chance to go after what you want. So the denial phase is definitely not fun either, because I think we all go through that. We all experience that dynamic where we wish things could stay perfect and uninterrupted and peaceful, but it's life. We're all going through changes. As I was going through my therapy sessions, I started to just reflect more on my life, and I started to journal. And for me, it was very helpful because, not that I was trying to prove anything, but it's very helpful to just kind of have a view on your life and say, okay, this is a new stage. It's unlike any others. One day, I went to a friend's event, to a friend's birthday, and I came home and I was like, oh my God, today actually is 45 days before my 45th birthday. I'm going to journal every day until my 45th birthday. And I did that. And so the journaling turned into 45, what am I grateful for? Then 44, what I did that year. 43, what I did that year. 42, what I did that year, and so on. And it became a huge reflection on my life. And that was super helpful to me. It definitely gave me so much appreciation for my journey, for the path that I'm on, for the life that I have, the things that I've learned, and the things that I don't want to repeat anymore. So it was very healing for me. So I highly recommend that journaling exercise. Um, the fourth phase is that exploration phase. And in the exploration phase, you are trying to figure out who you are in this crisis, in this moment in your life. Who are you really? You sometimes feel like happiness is an external thing that you need to go and get. If it's a possession, if it's a new job, if it's a new partner, if it's plastic surgery, and I'm not judging anyone for that. Like, you are externalizing your happiness because you think it's outside of you. and you still think that you need to prove something. And so you go explore, what does that look like? For me, it was leaving a corporate environment that I was no longer aligned with, or it wasn't aligned with me. It was, processing my hysterectomy and the fact that I would never be able to be a mom. It was also ending my marriage, and what now? Did I ever see myself as a divorced person? How do I process this big life change in my life? The good part about this stage too could be a lot of people actually end up finding their way, right? For me, as an example, I found myself exploring therapy and how could that improve my life. I found myself creating this podcast. I found myself also being a sound meditation practitioner and Ayurveda wellness coach. I found so many wonderful gems in this exploration phase that I'm so proud of and that I'm so grateful for. So the exploration phase is definitely not just negative. There's so many positives, and I think as people are going through the midlife crisis, they find their way home. That phase is very pivotal too, because a lot of what you're exploring is the deeper you, the deeper side of you. And I definitely have, and I couldn't recommend this more. Like once you get through a lot of the painful parts, I think the exploration phase could also be quite beautiful. Um, Last but not least, is kind of like landing at acceptance, accepting that life changes, accepting that your body changes, your mindset changes, your friends, your family members may look different to you because now you have a more expanded view on things. And so the last stage is that acceptance of, okay, I am getting older. Okay, I'm no longer doing what I thought I was going to be doing for my whole life, this career or being in this marriage or um having this dynamic with my family or looking at society in the way that I was. This last stage is all about kind of finding peace and finding joy and just being present again in your life and dictating, you know, um, do I need to update my values? Do I need to update my views? Do I need to update my habits? Do I need to make new friends? Do I need a new workplace? Do I need to leave this marriage? Like, what do I need to feel whole? And so the final stage is just about that, is accepting that life changes, there's shifts, there's pivots, there's transformation, and it's all beautiful. It's all a beautiful process that is leading you, back to your true nature, back to who you really are, back to who you're meant to be. And this life crisis is just really meant to sweep all of the things that are just no longer contributing to your life and bring in all the things that are there to take you to the next level. And this is the rising part, right? I think the most beautiful part about that trigger, the denial phase, the anger phase, the exploration phase, the withdrawal, the acceptance, is you're rising through all of that. You're rising through all of this pain that maybe you were carrying, all of this frustration that maybe you were carrying, and now is out of your system. You are no longer denying the stages of your life that are also critical. You're no longer seeking external validation or seeking external ways to make yourself happy. You're finding it inside of you. And so this part is the rising part. And now you can rise from the place of wholeness, purpose, joy, and beauty, and just exploring the deeper side of you. And I have to say that, after a few years of a lot of painful, after a few years of a lot of painful experiences and learning and trials and tribulations, as they say, I'm in a very good place in my life. Not a perfect place, as I mentioned. I'm living with my mother, and that in itself has brought so many gifts for me because we've been able to reconnect in a way that I never imagined before. When I left the Dominican Republic at the age of 11, I moved to New York to live with my dad, and I never lived with my mom again up until this point. And so I realized that, wow, I haven't lived with my mom since I was 11 years old, and now I'm 45 years old. That is such a long time. And now that I'm experiencing this time with my mother, I've been able to heal so much. I've been able to reconnect and to see her in her aging process and her um, as she navigates her 60s. And it's really beautiful to connect in that way. And so, for me, it's like this process is definitely nowhere near perfect. I'm still getting my entrepreneurship off the ground. I am working to build this podcast. I am trying to understand how I want to lead in this life with more purpose, with more impact, helping others, being a better person in the world that is desperately needed. And so that process is very messy. Definitely not living in like a dream place. Definitely not in the career of my dreams yet. Definitely not making the money that I want to make. But everything feels so perfect and so aligned and just slowly unfolding that everything was worth it. From the trigger point when I turned 41 to now 45, it's been a long road, but it's been all worth it. And I definitely um, encourage people going through some sort of crisis to take a step back and just reassess. And I promise you, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. A lot of the things that help me is leading into mindfulness, seeking therapy for sure, listening to podcasts that give me a different perspective, Googling information, reading books, talking to friends about my experiences, um, trying to be more present in my life, not internalizing a lot of the messages that we're getting from social media, from our government, sometimes from limiting beliefs that we grew up with within our family dynamics, and just trying to silence all of those voices that sometimes instill some doubt in me, right? And so, if you're going through some type of crisis in your life, know that it's part of your experience in this life, it's part of your human experience in this life, and to embrace it, right? Don't deny it, don't avoid it, don't numb it. Just throw yourself fully into that experience. And I promise you, you're going to learn so much. You're going to learn so much about yourself, about who you want to be in this world, about how you want to lead. And it's ultimately going to get you to a place that is more peaceful, that is more aligned, that is more purposeful, that is more whole, who you are essentially. And so embrace this stage. If somebody around you is going through through a midlife crisis, share this episode with them. Show them love. Show them grace and patience. Midlife crisis looks different for everybody. Perhaps not everybody goes through it. Thank God. Otherwise, we would constantly be in chaos. I never hear. I never heard my family, my tias, my mom, grandparents never talk about midlife crisis. So when it hit me, I just thought I was going crazy. So the reason I wanted to create this episode is because of that. Communities of color don't often talk about these topics, crisis, growth, these experiences. And so I wanted to provide this conversation for Latinas, for Black women, for women of all backgrounds who may not be receiving these conversations from their loved ones. Here it is. Let's talk about it. This episode is definitely a little bit more broader. We will go into life stages for women, especially as we're navigating perimenopause and some women navigating menopause right now and post. So we'll be able to talk about those topics more specifically. For this episode, I just wanted to kind of talk about turning 45, midlife crisis, and what does that look like. We'll definitely keep talking about this more. I feel like this is going to be like a 3-part episode. I hope this was helpful to you. Please share with your loved ones on your social media. Send me a comment, send me a message. Let me know what you think. And I hope you are doing well. I hope midlife is finding you healing and understanding and patient and graceful and grateful more than anything. Thank you for listening. I'm excited to get season 2 off the ground, and we have so much more content for you. Have a nice day, and I'll see you around. Mwah. Mwah.